Fortunes of Nigel, Chapter 5, describes an encounter between King James at the 6th and 1st and his jeweller, George Heriot.
Wherefore come ye not to court? Certain 'tis the rarest sport. There are silks and jewels glistening, prattling fools and wise men listening, billies among brave men justling, beggars amongst nobles bustling, low-breathed talkers, minion lispers, cutting honest throats by whispers. Wherefore come ye not to court? Skelton swears 'tis glorious sport.
Scott goes on to develop his characterization of the king.
Such was the monarch, who, saluting Heriot familiarly by the name of Jingling Geordie, for it was his well-known custom to give nicknames to all his familiars, inquired what new clatter-traps he had brought with him, to cheat his lawful and native prince out of his siller.
God forbid, my liege,
Said the citizen,
that I should have any such disloyal purpose. I did but bring a piece of plate to show to your most gracious majesty, which, both for the subject and for the workmanship, I were loath to put into the hands of any subject, until I knew your majesty's pleasure anent it.
Body o' me, man. Let's see it, Heriot. Though by my soul, Steenie's service o' plate was sae dear a bargain, I had maist pawned my word as a royal king to keep my own gold and silver in future, and let you, Geordie, keep yours.
Respecting the Duke of Buckingham's plate,
Said the goldsmith.
your majesty was pleased to direct that no expense should be spared, and...
What signifies what I desired, man? When a wise man is with fools and bears, he maun e'en play at the chucks. But you should have had more sense and consideration than to gie baby Charles and Steenie their own gate. They would have floored the very rooms with silver, and I wonder they didna.
George Heriot bowed and said no more. He knew his master too well to vindicate himself otherwise than by a distant allusion to his order. And James, with whom economy was only a transient and momentary twinge of conscience, became immediately afterwards desirous to see the piece of plate which the goldsmith proposed to exhibit, and dispatched Maxwell to bring it to his presence. In the meanwhile, he demanded of the citizen whence he had procured it.
From Italy, may it please your majesty.
Replied Heriot.
It has naething in it tending to papistry?
Said the king, looking graver than his wont.
Surely not, please your majesty.
Said Heriot.
I were not wise to bring anything to your presence that had the mark of the beast.
You would be more the beast yourself to do so.
Said the king.
It is well kenned that I wrestled with Dagon in my youth, and smote him on the groundsill of his own temple. A good evidence I should be in time called, however unworthy, the defender of the faith. But here comes Maxwell, bending under his burthen, like the golden ass of Apuleius.
Heriot hastened to relieve the usher, and to place the embossed salver, for such it was and of extraordinary dimensions, in a light favourable for his majesty's viewing the sculpture.
Soul of my body, man,
Said the king.
it is a curious piece, and as I think, fit for a king's chamber. And the subject, as you say, Master George, vara adequate and beseeming, being, as I see, the judgment of Solomon, a prince in whose paths it wheels becomes all leaving monarchs to walk with emulation.
But whose footsteps,
Said Maxwell.
only one of them, if a subject may say so much, hath ever overtaken.
Hold your tongue for a false fleeching loon.
Said the king, but with a smile on his face that showed the flattery had done its part.
Look at the bonny piece of workmanship, man, and hold your cleavering tongue. And his handiwork may it be, Geordie?
It was wrought, sir,
Replied the goldsmith.
by the famous Florentine, Benvenuto Cellini, and designed for Francis I of France. But I hope it will find a fitter master.
Francis of France.
Said the king.
Send Solomon, king of the Jews, to Francis. Body o' me, man, it would have kithed Cellini mad, had he never done anything else out of the gate. Francis, why, he was a fighting fool, man, a mere fighting fool. Got himself ta'en at Pavia, like our ain David at Durham lang syne. If they could have sent him Solomon's wit and love of peace and godliness, they would have done him a better turn. But Solomon should sit in other gate company than Francis of France.
I trust that such will be his good fortune.
Said Heriot.
It is a curious and vara artificial sculpture,
Said the king in continuation.
but yet methinks the carnifex or executioner there is brandishing his gully or near the king's face, seeing as he is within reach of his weapon. I think less wisdom than Solomon's would have taught him that there was danger in edged tools, and that he would have bidden the smake either sheath his shable or stand further back.
George Heriot endeavoured to alleviate this objection, by assuring the king that the vicinity betwixt Solomon and the executioner was nearer in appearance than in reality, and that perspective should be allowed for.
Gang to the deal with your prospective, man,
said the king.
There cannot be a war perspective for a lawful king who wishes to reign in love and die in peace and honour than to have naked swords flashing in his een. I am accounted as brave as mace folks, and yet I profess to ye I could never look on a bare blade without blinking and winking. But altogether it is a brave piece. And what is the price of it, man?
The goldsmith replied by observing that it was not his own property, but that of a distressed countryman.
Wilt you mean to make your excuse for asking the double of its worth, I warrant?
Answered the king.
I ken the tricks of you Burrows Town merchants, man.
I have no hopes of baffling your majesty's sagacity,
said Heriot.
The piece is really what I say, and the price £150 sterling. If it pleases your majesty to make present payment?
150 fiends, man, and as money witches and warlocks to raise them,
said the irritated monarch.
My soul, jingling Geordie, you are minded that your purse shall jingle to a bonny tune. How am I to tell you down £150 for what will not weigh as many merks? And you ken that my very household servitors and the officers of my mouth are 6 months in arrear.
The goldsmith stood his ground against all this objurgation, as being what he was well accustomed to, and only answered that, if his majesty liked the piece and desired to possess it, the price could be easily settled. It was true that the party could not want the money, but he, George Heriot, would advance it on his majesty's account, if such were his pleasure, and wait his royal conveniency for payment, for that and other matters. The money, meanwhile, lying at the ordinary usage.
By my honour,
said James.
And that is speaking like an honest and reasonable tradesman. We maun get another subsidy frae the commons, and that will make a compting of it. A waw wet, Maxwell, a waw wet, and let it be set where Steenie and baby Charles shall see it as they return from Richmond. And now that we are secret, my good old servant Geordie, I do truly opine that speaking of Solomon and ourselves, the hale wisdom in the country left Scotland when we took our travels to the Southland here.
George Heriot was courtier enough to say
that the wise naturally follow the wisest, as stags follow their leader.
The excerpt was read by Angus Miller, Michael Cameron, Jonathan Brown as Heriot, and Andy Pepiet as the king, all pupils at George Heriot School, Edinburgh.